This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the trail. Today I'm actually doing my first ever repeat backpacking trip. Going up to Rachel and Rampart Lakes, which I've been to before back in 2021. But we're gonna do a couple other side quests when we're up there this time. And I'm hiking with a group of buddies. I never backpack with other people, so it'll be nice to have some company on this trip. Got the trusty Mamiya 7.2, some rolls of gold, a couple rolls of Cinestill 400D. Should be a beautiful time, and I'm looking forward to getting back to this familiar location, but this time with a new camera setup and a couple different lenses. The last time I was up here, I only had a 90mm lens for the Pentax 6.7. This time we got a super wide lens in the 43mm for the Mamiya, and then also the 65 for the Mamiya as well. So packing heavy this time, 2 lenses, a whole bunch of camera gear, and yeah, hopefully it ends up being worth it. So the first time I did this hike, I set up camp down at Rachel Lake, and then the next morning hiked up the ridge and went and checked out Rampart Lakes. This time around, to switch things up, my friends and I wanted to actually camp at Rampart Lakes. There's a lot more open space up there, it's better for photography, and the system of trails really allows you to explore the area in depth. And there's not just one single lake. There's a few different lakes and small ponds, so you really get a nice variety of landscapes to photograph. And that evening we had planned to go up to Alta Mountain, and if we set up camp at Rampart Lakes, we'd be better situated to do that, as it's a little bit closer to the summit than Rachel Lake is. This hike is definitely one of my favorites that I've done over the past few years, as it offers a lot of variety in the landscapes that you see along the way, and it's not just one trail that leads to one destination out and back, and that's it. There's a lot of ways to customize this hike and make it your own. There's multiple trailheads that actually lead into Rampart Lakes. You can go to Lila Lakes, you can summit Alta Mountain, you can camp at Rachel or Rampart Lakes, and like I said, the landscapes you see at all these different locations can vary quite a bit. So you really get a good bang for your buck with this hike. And if you end up doing Alta Mountain, which is what we did on this hike, the total elevation gain you'll do is about 3,800 feet. And round trip, I think I ended with about 15 miles, but that includes all the little side quests I did for photos and whatnot. So it's just challenging enough to feel like you accomplished something at the end of it, but it's not too crazy where you're completely dead and wrecked for a few days afterwards. And as a photographer, doing a hike like this with all the variety is really nice because you're not left with one single composition to photograph once you get up to the lake. That's kind of how I felt on my previous backpacking trip to Goat Lake. I got up there and there was kind of only one main view to photograph, which was beautiful, don't get me wrong, but you want to find different trails to go down. You want to find different viewpoints. You want to get up a little bit higher in elevation. And I wasn't really able to do that on a hike like Goat Lake, but on this hike, you get all that opportunity and more. So only half of our group was actually camping at Rampart Lakes. The other 3 guys were just up doing a day hike with us. But we were all able to hang out at Rampart Lakes for a little bit, enjoy each other's company, do some fishing. I jumped in and went for a quick swim. The water this time around was much warmer than the previous time I jumped in Rampart Lakes. And after going back and looking at the old footage, seeing all the ice floating around in Rampart Lakes the first time might have something to do with it. But anyway, it was nice just to relax a little bit because Cooper, Jeff, and I had an evening summit mission on our hands. Our plan was to go up to the top of Alta Mountain, which is a nearby peak just up the way from Rampart Lakes. It adds about 2.5 miles round trip and maybe another 1,000 to 1,200 feet of elevation gain. The only problem was that it looked like we were going to be completely socked in once we got up to the top. There was a low-hanging cloud layer rolling up through the valley, and we feared that we might get stuck right in the middle of it once we got up there. But this is just one of those classic, there's only one way to find out situations. So we packed our bags and started slogging up to the top of Alta Mountain, which is actually a beautiful section of trail. There's tons of wildflowers this time of year, and you get a great view of Lila Lakes, which is right at the base of Alta Mountain. I will say there's about 6 or 7 false summits, it seems like, while making your way up to the top of Alta Mountain, so it's a little bit deceiving and discouraging at times, but we ended up making our way to the top where we found ourselves completely socked in. We were right in the middle of a cloud, couldn't see anything, so it was a little disappointing, but we waited there for about 15 or 20 minutes, and all of a sudden things started to clear up, the views started opening up, and we actually caught one of the craziest sunsets I've ever seen. Totally otherworldly, the light was incredible, and we even got some glimpses of Mount Rainier off in the distance. It really ended up being one of the coolest nights I've had out in the backcountry. And when we were hanging out on top of Alta Mountain, we actually met a couple that were camping on the summit. There's a little makeshift campsite right there on the summit of Alta Mountain. You don't really have room for a tent or anything like that, but you can just put some pads on the ground. There's a little wind shelter there, and you can camp up on the summit of this mountain, which is pretty sweet. And I was able to take some photos of them while I was up there, and these ended up being some of my favorite photos from the entire trip. I love being able to capture both candid and posed moments of other hikers that I meet out on my backpacking and hiking trips. It's a really special experience for me being able to take photos like this. I know that some of the photos I've been able to get of myself, self-portraits, and the video footage I've been able to capture of me out on my hikes over the past few years, it's some of my favorite things to look back on. I love going back and watching these old videos because these are some of the best experiences that I've ever had. And to be able to capture a moment like that for somebody else and then share it with them afterwards, that's a really fun thing for me to do as a photographer. So the mission up to Alta Mountain was a fantastic success, one of the coolest experiences I've had out in the backcountry. I decided to mess around with some flash photography while we were up on Alta Mountain and making our way back down to Rampart Lakes afterwards. Some of the photos turned out pretty cool, but I was worried that the photos I was taking while the clouds were really thick would kind of turn out a little weird because the flash might reflect off the moisture in the air and reflect off the clouds in a weird way, and that's definitely kind of what happened. It's really hard to make out what's going on in some of these photos just because the cloud layer was so thick. But I really do enjoy bringing the flash up on these backpacking trips, especially if I am with other people. I've only done a couple backpacking trips ever with other people, but both those times I did bring the flash, and it can make for some fun photos, especially when you're taking pictures of your friends or trying to grab some images after the sun has set. I've recently been shooting Cinestill 400D up on my backpacking trips, and while I really like the results from the film, I like the colors, I like the tonality, and I like the smoothness of the film, I'm having a really difficult time with the film rolling loosely inside my camera. I don't know if anybody else deals with this with Cinestill film, but I shot 5 rolls of Kodak Gold through my Mamiya 7 II up on this same trip. I didn't have a single issue with any of those rolls, but both of the Cinestill 400D rolls I put in my Mamiya ended up rolling loosely, and one of the rolls, completely littered with light leaks. And it's unfortunate because like I said, I really like this film when it does turn out, but it's hard for me to load it in my camera knowing that there's this possibility of all these light leaks occurring on my frames. And it seems to happen at least 30% of the time, it seems like. Maybe I just got a bad few rolls. I don't know if anybody else deals with this with Cinestill film, but it's just one of those things that is really keeping me from using these film stocks more often, because when you're shooting something you care about, you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure you get clean frames at the end of it. And after this backpacking trip, I just think it's going to be hard for me to justify bringing any more Cinestill rolls up on future backpacking trips. All right, that is going to wrap up the second backpacking trip of the year and the second backpacking trip I've ever done with other people. Obviously a totally different experience doing a backpacking trip with others versus solo, and it was really refreshing. It was nice to be able to share this experience with my friends, have somebody to talk to while I'm out there. The solo trips can definitely get a little lonely. You can get in your head pretty easily. But I will say the solo trips might be a little bit better for photography and making these videos, as I can totally go at my own pace and not feel guilty about holding people up or anything like that. So there's advantages to both, but it was definitely super fun to have some friends with me up on this trip. And hopefully I can get some friends out there for future trips as well. Was able to leave this trip with some good photos. The weather wasn't exactly the way that I hoped it would be. Obviously the conditions up on top of Alta Mountain were pretty epic, but the rest of the time it was kind of overcast. Would have liked a little bit more sun, but hey, I can't complain. We didn't get rained on, so that's the important thing. All right, thanks very much for tuning in to this episode, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Peace. Squarespace is much more than just a website building platform. You can use it to build a business, sell products, manage inventory, or host an online portfolio. One of my favorite aspects about Squarespace is that because of its extremely intuitive interface and wide selection of creative templates, you can have a professional website up and running in virtually no time, with zero coding required. There's also a new design intelligence feature that helps you get started with the creation of a new website, even if you're not super design savvy. Just punch in some basic info, select what features you'd like on your site, a color palette, and Squarespace will build a quick website that you can further customize to fit your needs. Maybe you're a photographer looking to get new inquiries and increase bookings. Clients can schedule a session directly on your site. Maybe you have a blog and want to offer additional content to community members. Squarespace offers memberships for those creating exclusive content. There's so many features that make Squarespace the one-stop shop for those looking to create or expand their business. If you'd like to receive 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain, head over to squarespace.com/Brae or use code Brae at checkout to do so.